Thank you so much. Well, I was asked not to talk about airports today, and I will keep my references to the Urban Tech Republic as short as possible. Creating urban tech is the main theme of this conference, and my job has been for the last 5 years actually to create the Urban Tech Republic. And given that I expected to be the president of that republic already, I can only talk about how much I sympathize with Prince Charles, and his waiting for the throne is probably a very similar feeling. Which brings us back to London and Philip Road. So Philip studied actually in Berlin, and before he left to London, whilst I was at LSE, I spent 7 years at LSE, did my PhD there. So before he left to London, he did a master's thesis on the after use of Tegel, of the Tegel airport, at the end of 90s, I think it was 98, 99. So there's a common link between us, which is pretty astounding actually. And also we are cooperating with LSE cities, as we are cooperating with other cities like Amsterdam. Ger and I have a long history together, and other cities as well. So there is not much left to say. Ramona Popp told you about fantastic advances in smart cityness in Berlin. Ger talked about the charm of decentralized approaches, and Philip about the essence of regulation in that space, and I go along with both of them. So perhaps I pick a few points where I tend to agree or disagree. The most important one, I think, for our discourse is what Philip mentioned earlier, that the whole smart city discourse is one driven by industry. It's an industry discourse driven by large corporations like IBM, like Cisco, Siemens, and the others. And if you look at the advances, or the lack of them, it's also a story of thwarted expectations. So we had high hopes in industry and little delivery. Why is that the case? One reason is certainly that of cultures. We have the technologists, and I admit, so by heart, I'm a geek. I love technology. But for the last 5 years, I have worked with urbanists. And urbanists and technologists don't speak the same language. They are two completely different species. And to bring them together is one of the main challenges. So there are advances, and we see projects that close that gap, that bridge that gap. One is what Dan Doctorow is trying with Sidewalk Labs, another Google daughter and Alphabet daughter. He used to be the vice mayor of New York under Bloomberg, and what they do is they say we have to rethink cities completely. We have to think a city from the internet up. We have to think about connectivity and the people in it first, and how they move, how they interact, and only then we start with city planning. And last week they published that they start their work with a 50-hectare area in Toronto, in Canada, as a first project. Now, earlier, Mr. Karl asked all of you who believes that you live in a smart city, and the response was staggering. I would like to take a different approach, a different question, and ask you, so who of you think that you live in a good city? Hands up. Who of you think, okay, there we go. And there we are at the heart of the matter, I think. Because in the end, it's not about technology, but it's about your daily interaction, your experiences with your government, of course, but also the livability. And if you take a step back, the whole smart city discussion, and I don't like the term smart city whatsoever, the whole smart city discussion should be one about creating more livability, more walkability, more cyclability, better governance, more interaction between citizens, more inclusion. So what tools, technical tools, can we use to improve our inclusiveness and our participation in the social discourse in a city? And that makes us feel more citizens, more valued, and makes us happier people. So before I start to bore you with all the rest and our great advances in Berlin, and of course we are very proud as Berliners what we have achieved here. I'd much rather open the floor and engage in a lively discussion with my two combatants. Thank you.